New videos every day.
Hey there, I am Marie Black, and I'm a life coach. I'm a life coach, based out of Austin, Texas. And I've been talking a little bit about how this is my first pregnancy, so I've been researching a lot on childbirth, and from that choosing the kind of childbirth that I want to have. So what I'd like to talk to you about now is the difference between a medical model of childbirth, which is the hospital model, what happens in the hospital, versus a natural model, which is something that could happen in a hospital, but more likely will happen for you if you're having a home birth or birthing at a birth center. So things to know about the medical model or hospital model that you may not have known if you haven't researched it to give birth there are that when you go in, there's likely to be a lot more stimulation, a lot more things that you have to deal with, a lot more decisions that you have to make. And anytime you're in a decision-making mode, you're in your head, and sometimes that can take your energy away from what you need to be focusing on, which is being in your body and working with your body, obviously to birth the child. So if you are very committed to having the baby in the hospital, that's totally fine. You can still do it on your own terms. You just have to do a lot more research and just recognize what you'll be dealing with. The first thing that you'll be dealing with when you go in is they're going to inundate you with a lot of forms, because there's liability, there's insurance, there's a lot of things they're going to have you sign off on. So you'll probably want to get as many of them done first before before you're even in labor. So that minimizes, when you have to go and deal with all of that. So then the second thing that will happen is they'll check you to see if you're actually in active labor, and just what stage of labor you're at. So that will involve a cervical exam, and that's always really fun. So there is a school of thought that says you want to minimize the number of cervical exams that you can. Just because it can be disruptive to the labor process, but that is something you would want to research and look into. So they'll look at your cervix, and depending on where you're at, they'll place you. They may tell you to go home if it's too early, which can actually be a good thing, because then you can do your own process to get labor going more. You can walk. There's other forms of natural labor stimulation that you can do. And that can be really helpful to get you more active into labor before they actually put you in a bed, which can be not so great for progressing labor and not so great for you. So let's say then that you get put into the room. They do admit you. Most likely, unless you have specified differently, they're going to hook you up to a fetal monitor, and they're going to put the start of an IV in your arm. And most likely what that will do is will lock you into a situation where you're less mobile. You'll be in the bed, basically. If you want to get up and walk around, it could be difficult. You'd have to take off the fetal monitor. You'd have to take your pole and walk around. I mean, it doesn't make it impossible, but it does make it a little more difficult. And lack of mobility can create a tension in your mind that again can make your body also tense. And when you're dealing with a lot of tension, generally speaking, there's more pain involved. So when there's more pain, then what will normally start happening is the nursing staff will come in and say, okay, you're in pain, we see, how would you like an epidural, right? So they'll offer you either an epidural or some other kind of pain relief, and a lot of those can actually slow labor. So if labor is slowed, then they'll offer you something called augmentation, which is Pitocin. Most people have heard about Pitocin. It's actually a synthetic form of oxytocin, which is something that's produced naturally in the body, and it's there to help progress labor. So you're kind of, you're in this situation where you're almost sort of locked into a bed, right? And then you start to feel pain. You won't necessarily have the support of the nurses because they may have other people they have to look after. In fact, they likely will, unless you luck out and you're the only one giving birth that day on that floor. So you're locked in onto a path at this point that may not be the path that you want. So eventually that path could end in cesarean section or vacuum delivery or forceps delivery. So these are all things that you need to consider before you actually go into the hospital and just determine what level of intervention, if any, that you want. So those are some things to consider. It's not the end of the world. Babies are born that way often. It's just, it depends on the kind of birth experience that you want to have. Do you want to have it kind of laced with a lot of interventions or a more natural one? So, thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. Feel free to give me a thumbs up, to leave a comment, and also to subscribe to the channel.